and welcome to the G3 podcast. Joining me today is Kyle Wiltshire, CEO at TESTA, a global quality testing service built specifically for the iGaming industry. Kyle, thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So TESTA, it's the first time I've come across you as a business. So what's TESTA's story? How was the company founded?
So TESTA was actually spun out of an existing technical consulting company. We run here out of Taipei. We've been doing this kind of work for both iGaming companies and other software businesses that want to just optimize their products for the region and deal with some unique technical challenges. As something we did on those contracts throughout the years was, sometimes you just want to see real things from the ground. You want to see you're doing some live streaming video or something that's very kind of qualitative in nature or requires, kind of third parties that you can't just test with your internal teams. We would always hire and find testers in the market to validate some of the work we were doing. We would say, this is how things looked before we started optimizing, and this is how things look after. And it was kind of evidence from the ground. So we've been doing this form of testing for 6-7 years now. What eventually happened was we would kind of solve the technical challenge of a client, and they would say, hey, it was really useful having those people in India or Japan. Could you get me somebody in Thailand? Could you get me somebody in Malaysia? And with enough people requesting this, eventually kind of we put two and two together and we realized this is an opportunity in and of itself, and it's something people value. So TESTA was kind of spun out, and it was born about 1.5 years ago now.
And who's involved in the business? Are there any kind of iGaming executives with decades of experience, or is it quite where the origins of the business came from and is from other industries? And also, why set this particular offshoot of the business up in Taipei?
It's out of Taipei just because that is where all this experience with testing kind of came out of. I do have a partner in the business. He's also been in the iGaming space for a long time. Otherwise, it's just a group of people that have worked with iGaming companies, providers, operators for years, kind of solving the technical problems. So we understand why they want to get this information and the usefulness of this information a lot better than, say, another, crowd testing company would. We're from the space. We have history in the space. I've worked with an operator way back when, before we started doing this technical consulting. So we've got a lot of industry experience in the company, and we just solely focus on the gambling vertical.
And how is crowd testing different from quality assurance, or is it part of quality assurance? Is it standalone to or part of the process?
It's a new, I would say, paradigm or a new tool in the toolkit that's being added to quality assurance. So the problem with traditional QA is you've got a team of people that are maybe in one location, and they bring certain biases. They have, their own devices. They have an internet connection that's probably pretty solid and a good laptop and all these type of things. Especially in our industry, as it grows and gets more and more international, you may be in a market where the phones are very different and the internet connectivity is very different, and you're relying on SMS or email or app tools that you don't have a lot of experience with or are quite different. So we do best when the people actually developing the software are far physically and culturally from kind of where they're operating. So it can be as simple as just localization and making sure that the UX and the language used is correct. It could be as complicated as, payment providers, SMS providers, different kind of third-party plugins. So we kind of give a new perspective on how the product actually looks. We're not meant to replace QA. It's an additive resource, and especially useful when you're in many locations and you just don't have the visibility from the ground in those locations.
It's a few strands of that answer I want to pick up, particularly on kind of what metrics they monitor and also on the market side of things. But firstly, who are the testers and the analysts? I mean, I saw when I was looking through your site that I could apply. So would I get the role? What are their backgrounds and how is the performance monitored?
It's a huge variation. So we kind of profile them based on the skills they bring. And it also depends on what the client wants. Sometimes they simply want somebody who is technically sound enough just to prove that they can navigate the menus, that there's no bugs, that this particular process works or does not work. You get more advanced requests where, I want somebody with familiarity of sports betting and complicated parlays or whatever to try this product and give me feedback and see if the right markets are there. So we're kind of building out this massive database and this community of people all over the globe who are okay with testing gambling sites. They bring certain skills to the table. They're kind of categorized as such. So it varies wildly. There's kind of anything from just a 20-year-old who wants to make a few bucks and is happy to load a website and record a video to somebody that's been in the industry sometimes for decades and just likes looking at the different stuff around the world and, making a few dollars on the side. So, and everything in between.
And so how does that crowdsourced quality testing work? Is it a case of, right, okay, Will, I want you to check our onboarding. I want you to check the onboarding of this particular site and what you think of it. Just give it a rating out of 10. Or is it, could you give us comprehensive feedback, fill in this form afterwards? Is there a lot to it, or is it kind of a simple thing for people to do?
So that's kind of the fun. There's either of those cases can be met. Sometimes we get kind of that, give us some UX feedback, tell us what their experience is. And often it's a little more qualitative. It's, operators definitely care about the first time deposit flow. That's got to be the most common thing that the operators want tested. So they'll go in there, sign up with an account, deposit, do all these things. Where it gets fun is, you can go in there and you can go through the FTD flow for one operator. And I can tell you, okay, well, it took 90 seconds in total and it had this many fields and these were the payment options and it was this successful or it wasn't, right? That information is useful. Where it becomes really interesting is if you benchmark with a few other in the region and you say, I'm looking to gain share from these people, or I'm kind of defending share from these up and comers, right? So you can see what does their whole experience look like, and you get an idea of how you kind of compare to what's in the market. So there's definitely the UX side, but we see a lot more of that qualitative, somebody goes through the registration process. A, did it work? B, how does it compare to everything else in the market? Where can it improve? Was it smooth? Was it not?
And do you send out these tests to people kind of on a geographic basis? So you have maybe a provider come to you and say, we want to enter the Italian market, and then you get a load of Italian testers to test it? Or is it something that goes out to the kind of the whole pool of your testers?
So it gets defined first, what they want to test where. I would say 70, 80% of test requests are geographically bound. Sometimes people just care about a particular product and it doesn't really matter. But often it's targeting a certain region, so they need that region. In the US, for example, there's extreme challenges with testing and getting visibility in that market just because there's so many hard regulations around geo-compliance and everything. So you can't even sign up or view the sites unless you're physically in the market with a phone, with a GPS, reporting your location, right? So just getting visibility of what the actual experience looks like is quite hard if you're, say, looking at a sports bettor in Illinois, but your people are in Sweden or Malta or what have you. Yeah.
And is it ever demographic based? So can it be, we want female testers or we want 18 to 25 testers?
Yep. So there's kind of a middle layer, and that's where the magic happens. So a customer would tell us, this is what we're interested in testing. These are the goals. This is who we'd like it to test. From there, we can kind of assign who we want those testers to look like, what experience we want them to have. The testers can pick up the test if they like, they execute it. And then the real, important thing is we validate all the work in between. So I've actually, as we've built this business, I've been quite surprised how many operators, providers at scale have just been managing this problem themselves for years. They say, yeah, I have testers, and sometimes it's quite sophisticated and there's entire departments and teams that manage them. And sometimes it's just, I have friends and family and I'm just spamming them constantly to help me see if SMS works in this market, right? And everything in between. So yes, we assign all the information to a tester, get the result, verify if the result was proper, put it in a format the customer can understand, and we kind of manage the data and the information as it goes down to the ground to be tested, and then back to the provider.
You touched before on first time deposit flow being a big thing for your clients. What are you finding that operators and providers are also looking to test when they utilize tester services? So whether it be onboarding, payments, bonuses, performance, is there a general trend towards one of those aspects?
For operators?
For operators and providers, both.
Providers look into game performance quite a lot. That's something that, as you get farther and farther out from, again, their area of expertise or their home markets, they get quite curious at, okay, our slot reel spin time is like this, or our load time is like this. In the European market, what does it look like in Asia or Latin America? So especially those providers that are in 30, 40 plus markets, they're quite interested to kind of get feedback from the ground. Operators, aside from the first time deposit flow, which is quite common, a lot of kind of just, there's been a big thing. So the platform's been updated, or we're adding some new feature to the sports book, or something large has happened and they're about to promote it. And before putting all those marketing dollars, it's like, maybe we should just get some feedback from the ground and make sure it's all okay, right? So we see a lot of, okay, there's a new product, there's a new promotion. We just want to see and get feedback from the ground and validate everything looks cool before we throw 100, 500K, $1 million at the promotion, whatever it may be.
And do you have any numbers? I mean, I'm looking on your site, as I mentioned before, I saw a few clients' names. I won't name them now. You can name them. I don't want to potentially jeopardize the podcast in any way. But do you have any numbers, perhaps, that you can share to demonstrate how crowd testing improves things like software quality, time to market, and localized insights?
I mean, I can share a kind of few recent stories. I don't have any names that have kind of told me it's okay, so I don't want to name drop where it may not be welcome. But we recently worked with a group entering the sweeps market in the US. They're based in, I think, South Africa. They weren't, they don't have the presence in the US. It's quite far, both in terms of time zones and culturally and everything else. So we help them just from the ground in various states look at who are the leaders here? What does this process look like? What are they offering? What are these kind of key signups, communications, emails, retargeting. So we help them collect a whole bunch of information on entering that market just by using people in the ground and saying, do this, do this, do this. They just recently told us we saved them about 4 or 5 months of work. So, I mean, there's kind of an anecdote there. Another group in the last month or two, it was kind of what we were just saying earlier, where they're launching in the Canadian market, or they're expanding kind of their spend there. They're doing some major marketing campaigns. They just wanted to make sure that all the payments were working properly, that everything they had previously configured was actually good to go. And sure enough, we found a few issues with payments, and they improved those. And, they could have been driving, I can't tell you what the change in terms of like their deposit rate may have been, but I'm sure that fixing those issues made some percentage of difference, right? Unfortunately, we're in the middle, so we don't always get to see the bottom line, but I should certainly ask more and more clients for those type of stats, because we'd like to explain kind of the end to end. But what we generally see is that people come in with some sort of limited use case or specific problem. And once they get used to having people on the ground, often it takes a few months, but they expand their scope and they say, could we do this? Could we do this? I've had a lot of fun this year just because I'm getting more and more people reaching out and saying, hey, we did this. Can we also do that? Can we also do that? So it's validating that what we do is useful, and they must be getting some results if they're looking to do more with us. So.
And an interesting strand to this is whether it could be a very simple answer of no, but are there any regulatory challenges to crowd testing? So technically your testers aren't, well, they're not gambling if it's can you do tests in any market around the world without issue? So say there's I don't know, a grey market or an unregulated market that's looking like it's going to regulate, and you've got providers and operators kind of circling, going, we're interested in that market, but we want to do some crowd testing there. Is that something that you could do, or are there regulatory challenges for you in those kinds of markets?
No, as far as we can tell, there really is no problem. I mean, we're testing sites on the public internet. We're not operating. We're not taking bets. Um, in some cases, if it's a market that we feel maybe problematic, we'll make sure they have some sort of test balance or whatever. So it's very clearly not, going through the entire financial system. But as far as we can see, I mean, we are just out there providing information on what is available on the public internet. I mean, if the regulators or governments want to work with us, we're happy to do it as well, right? We're simply actioning what's out there on publicly available URLs.
It's particularly interesting. Are there any markets that are really hot at the moment?
We see a lot of Brazil. So obviously, as that regulates, people are quite interested in how things are moving there. A lot of the Latin America interest in general. South Africa has got a lot of interest, in Africa and in general. We do a lot of testing in Asia just because this is kind of our backyard. So Southeast Asia, East Asia, kind of a mix there. And the US, of course, and the Canadian, both the kind of gray market that, was served from a Maltese license or whatever, and the regulated Ontario market. So it's a real mix. And I'm having fun kind of launching a company that goes global from day one in the iGaming space, because it could be anywhere, and it's regulated or unregulated. And, the world's kind of our oyster. I would say the one area where I don't see too much in, and it shouldn't be too much of a shock, is Europe, just because there's so many people in Europe that can see these things. It's kind of known, right? I mean, that's where kind of a lot of the talent in the industry has been built up over the years. So that's a little more, I think, seen, whereas the farther flung places or the new developing countries, that's a bit more of the unknown.
Gut instinct says that it's going to be a really successful business over the coming years. So a final one for me is, what does 2025 have in store?
Just a lot of growth. I mean, 2024 was the first year we truly went to market, and it's been exciting. But 2025, we just, like you said, you hadn't heard of us. We need to solve that problem, get our name out there a bit more. So we'll be a lot more present at trade shows, in the right media channels, I suppose, looking for partnerships in key, areas. Probably going to raise a small round of funding. We will see. So it's just taking what we've learned and refining it, building a better software platform to manage everything, bringing in more people to handle kind of the test load. We've had, in the last few months, it's gotten better, but we were a little overwhelmed at kind of the rise in the existing clients who wanted more. We do a lot of demo tests. That's kind of our sales process. We don't PowerPoint people to death. If they're interested, they can just get a real test in the market of their choosing and see how it works. And we also publish a lot of research where we basically pay for our own tests just to show people how it all works. So between all of these three channels, we were really overloading kind of the test managers. So a few more people running all the test managers, more people to manage the community, just trying to throw kind of gasoline on the fire, as it were, I think.
Well, I look forward to meeting you in person. I presume you're going to be at ICE?
I will.
Excellent. Kyle, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, Kyle. I'm sure you'll be on again in the future.
Thanks a lot, Will.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you want to watch more, why not subscribe to our channel somewhere here.